Excellency Minister for Environment and Tourism of the Government of Mongolia, Mr. Ulaanbaatar Sarai, other dignitaries present in the August Hall, academicians, thinkers, and other ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be speaking here on the subject of Buddha's message of compassion and its centrality to the success of development democracy. Friends, maybe many of you are aware that social scientists in the United States are reportedly worried about the fact that the millennial generation of their country appears to be thoroughly incapable of the ability to empathize. In an atmosphere filled with ultra-individualism, for many in the western part of the globe, world is not just becoming flat, but also becoming more and more small. Many believe that the size of the world is limited to what they are exposed to. Happily, a software engineer in some other part of the world, and equally worried about the lack of ability to empathize, applied his creative mind and came out with an idea of a computer game which is known as Real Lives. You can go to the Google and just find out the game which is known as Real Lives. It's a game where once you enter into the game, you acquire a virtual life, and the life is in any part of the globe, in any country on the earth, depending upon the socio-economic conditions of that country. The virtual person, which is what you are, faces challenges like famine, epidemic, floods, or earthquake, and so on and so forth. And while the player, which means you, engages himself or herself in facing the unforeseen challenges, he or she also very naturally develops the ability to empathize. We know there are some developments that change the game and hence are called as game changers, but here the game itself is changing your way to think, to imagine the pain, to identify with the sufferers, and also to empathize. I am happy to share that the software engineer is from my country, he is an Indian, and the game Real Lives is not only becoming popular but also making a big impact. Friends, basic human sensitivity is the mother of the ability to empathize. And the origin of sensitivity lies in Gautam Buddha's karuna or compassion. The compassion or karuna is the essential quality of bodhisattva. Karuna is also one of the 4 Brahma Viharas or sublime states. Compassion indicates the qualities of the heart, love and respect for all living beings. Mahakaruna or the great compassion is the last of the 18 virtues of Buddha. It became a high priority ideal with the rise of Mahayana ideology, as many of us are conscious. Enlightened souls from all religions across the globe seek to uplift human beings from their sufferings. The greatness of Gautama, the Buddha, lies in the fact that he, for the first time in human history, made human suffering as the central point of his philosophical system. In fact, the first percept of his teaching is everything is of the nature of suffering, sarvam dukkham, which is followed by the doctrine of 12 causes of human suffering, which is known as Dwadasha Nidan, which highlights the fact of sufferings, its origin, its cessation, and the path to be followed to overcome suffering. Wisdom, which is pragya, and compassion, which is karuna, are the 2 guiding principles of the process of removal of sufferings. Wisdom and compassion, ladies and gentlemen, are uniquely human qualities. But wisdom without compassion is empty, and compassion without wisdom is blind. Here I am also reminded of 7 sins as were elaborated by no less than a person of the stature of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji had said, while elaborating what these 7 sins are, he says, wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, science without humanity, knowledge without character, politics without principles, commerce without morality, and worship without sacrifice. These are the 7 sins, and I would say compassion without wisdom and wisdom without compassion could also be incorporated in this list of sins in a way. And therefore, Buddha gives equal importance to both wisdom, that is prajna, which is defined as an insight in the true nature of reality. Without going into the deep metaphysical meanings of Upanishadic and Buddhist traditions, we may highlight that wisdom lies in carefully examining facts that contradict our beliefs, keeping an open mind rather than being closed-minded, listening to other points of views rather than being bigoted. A person who does this is certainly wise and is certain to arrive at true understanding. The word compassion, let me underline here, is made up of 2 words, ko, meaning together, and passion, meaning a strong feeling. When we see someone in distress and we feel their pain as if it were our own and strive to eliminate or lessen their pain, then this is compassion. One must understand that all the unique characteristics of human beings, like sharing, readiness to give comfort, sympathy, concern, and caring, are all manifestations of nothing but karuna, or the compassion. In Western medical ethics, compassion serves mainly to define the responsibilities and duties of medical professionals. In contrast, Eastern medical ethics consider developing compassion as a prerequisite in becoming a physician and recognize its curing effects. Very important. In the traditional medicine of Tibet and Mongolia, where Mahayana Buddhism prevails, a physician is seen as an enlightened person who has been thoroughly trained in Buddhist philosophy. In order to become a physician, one should develop compassion, which is considered as a path of enlightenment. Compassion is not a characteristic but a skill used for therapeutic purposes, which should be mastered through training and mediation, stage by stage. What is essential for becoming a good physician is perhaps more required to become a good ruler, a good administrator. And this is more expected from a leader who is chosen by the people through a democratic process, which is why a value system that recognizes the centrality of compassion is a prerequisite of a successful democratic regime. Skepticism about the success of democracy became more pronounced after the 3rd wave of democracy in the post-Second World War era. The presumption that democracy is the best amongst all the available forms of governance and it can be a success in any society has proved to be wrong, as in certain parts of the world, democracies have either failed completely or proved to be sham democracies. While the reasons for the widening acceptability of democracy are not far to seek, with regards to the reasons behind their apparent failures, changing socio-cultural environment is emerging as the prime reason. Extensive surveys conducted by world-renowned research bodies like Pew Research Center have concluded that while ideas at the core of liberal democracy remain popular amongst global publics, but commitment to democracy is often found to be weak or suspicious. Multiple factors contribute to the lack of commitment, including perceptions about how well democracy is functioning. And as findings from new Pew Research Center survey show, views about the performance of democratic system are decidedly negative in many nations. Across 27 countries polled, a median of 51% is dissatisfied with how democracy is working in their country. Just 45% are satisfied. Assessments of how well democracy is working vary considerably across the nations. Renowned political scientist and researcher Pippa Norris of the Kennedy School of Government presents a brilliant analysis of the diminishing popular trust in the idea of democracy. She says, development is most effective where regimes combine the qualities of democratic responsiveness and state effectiveness. However, one can easily infer that lack of genuine integrity with the concept of democratic responsiveness gives birth to the negligence of state effectiveness, and again, without a sense of compassion towards the people, democratic responsiveness will always remain superficial and largely contrived. And therefore, as I underscore, compassion is a force that demolishes artificial compartments, underscoring the essential element of equality of human beings, which is one of the basis of thinking both in Buddhism and in Hinduism as well. Let me now quote His Holiness Dalai Lama. In one of his writings, he had said, "The Buddha saw that life's very purpose is happiness. He also saw that while ignorance binds beings in endless frustration and suffering, wisdom is liberating. Modern democracy is based on principles that all human beings are essentially equal, that each of us has an equal right to life, liberty, and happiness. Buddhism too recognizes that human beings are entitled to dignity, that all members of the human family have an equal and inalienable right to liberty, not just in terms of political freedom, but also at the fundamental levels of freedom from fear and from want, irrespective of another, to one religion or another, adhering to this ideology or that, each of us is just a human being like everyone else. Not only do we all desire happiness and seek to avoid suffering, but each of us has an equal right to pursue these goals." Unquote. Buddhism, as all of us understand, is essentially a practical doctrine in recognizing sufferings as the fundamental fact of life. Many political scientists have pointed out that for sustainable democratic governance, democratic spirit is an essential ingredient of the cultural milieu of the society of the respective country. Right since the ancient period, the ideas of Buddha have provided a strong foundation for democracy in general and democratic governance in particular. True that if democracy is about accommodation and rejection of monopolistic approach, adherence to the principle of spiritual democracy is a must. In a spiritual democracy, there is almost total rejection of any monopolistic or hegemonic view about any particular way of worship. This undoubtedly has contributed greatly to the creation of a more conducive atmosphere for democracy to be sustainable. Friends, the fact remains that for democracy alone may not help what Buddha wanted to achieve. For enduring peace of mind, happiness is essential, and it was certainly not just a coincidence that the idea of gross human happiness index originated in Bhutan, a country of the worshippers of Buddha. Happiness, although not entirely or solely, but largely depends upon development with ease of living at its core. In that sense, friends, democracy that delivers development is the need of the hour. Rulers motivated by the idea of Buddha and influenced by the idea of compassion alone can evolve this fundamental commitment to democracy, and not just democracy, but democracy that delivers through development and ease of living. Before I conclude, I must say that a world order based on principles of justice and equality, Hindu and Buddhist traditions will have to acquire further strength, become more pronounced, become more articulate, jointly work for new knowledge creation for generations ahead, and in keeping with Buddha's message of Atta Deepa Bhava, continue to spread the light and eliminate darkness from all over the world. If they reach any Ulaanbaatar message, I believe it is essentially this.